I forgot, so it is unfortunate, but the material is in the textbook for your review, and this was to help you to understand some of the graphs and models in the textbook. I will open now for your questions. I know some of you are struggling with this material. It's very natural. You have a lot of ideas that you are trying to make yourself familiar with, a lot of concepts and so forth. Many of you may still be struggling with the idea of graphs, and to a point that you are confused as to when to use any of these, when to use any of the economic models discussed, because that's one question many of you have. It's all right, I understand this model and I understand that model and so forth. When do I use it, and so forth. Remember, if there are questions about choice and allocation of resources, efficiency of production and so forth, you use this production possibility frontier, where you have output of one goods and then output of other goods, and you use this model to show choices, growth, contraction, unemployment within the production possibility frontier, where you have the potential to be out there on the curve and yet you're inside. This represents unemployment. Something these days, if you were to think of the US economy with double-digit unemployment, we are way below the production possibility frontier. Now, that's where you use this model. It's a fantastic model for strategy, understanding growth, understanding biased growth, because when we talked earlier about medical care output and all other goods output, we said that we are now experiencing growth in a biased fashion. Other sectors are shrinking while the medical care sector is becoming larger and larger and larger segment of the economy. If you can think of the economy as a pie, medical care is becoming larger. The expectation is that in less than 10 years would be 1/5 or 20% of the economy, 20% of gross domestic product. So this is a case of biased growth that is not particularly desirable, in part, as we said earlier, because medical care is not something we like for its own sake. We like medical care because we like other advantages that it brings with it, such as health, and therefore healthy people can produce more and enjoy life more. If you were to specifically talk about individual products or services, then you use the market model. Quantity of a given good and the price of a given good. There's a demand and supply, an equilibrium price and quantity, and then in that context you can discuss changes in demand and also changes in elasticity of demand. If this happened to be, let's say, aspirin, and currently people people consume aspirin for its general value in terms of managing inflammation and headache. However, if the news is out there that aspirin can actually reduce certain kind of cancer, suddenly the demand for aspirin not only will increase, but people will lose their price sensitivity. If today you go to Walmart and you have 2 or 3 different brands and you buy the generic for $3, if you find out that aspirin can reduce 1 or 2 chances of 1 or 2 cancer, not only you buy more aspirin and consume it more often, but you may be willing to pay $12. And in this case, the demand has increased and price sensitivity has decreased. Okay. If you were use this model to talk about improvement in medical care, let's look at one particular product. And every product has to have a separate model. When you put things in the context of market models, this has to be the quantity, access, this has to be price, not anything else. And inside this will have to be demand and supply curves, nothing else. Because often people get confused watching these L-shaped 2 axes, and then they think that they can put anything they like and then invent discussions that are not related to quantity and price. So let's look at one particular product that and then look at this cost structure and the supply curve. Let's say quantity of primary care, and this would be price of primary care. Let's say this primary care happened to be common cold. Okay? Now, if you have to make an appointment and see an MD, this MD happens to have an office, receptionist, equipment, so forth and so on. He himself or she is highly educated, many years of education and so forth. So the supply curve of producing common cold by an MD will have this shape. Steep, meaning that for every care this MD provides, the marginal cost will rise, and therefore price has to be higher. Now let's say that we throw at it, meaning common cold, nurse practitioner. What would that do to the cost structure? Well, it will reduce the cost structure. And not only that, because it reduces cost structure across the board for every care that a nurse practitioner produces versus an MD, that's a technological change. So this would be a supply curve with a nurse practitioner. So meaning that the same care before, you need to have a visit. If you went to an MD, you had to pay $225 per visit. If you went for the same care to a nurse practitioner, this could be, let's say, $90. Now what if you went to a mini clinic to a nearby CVS? Well, they're using the back of the office that used to be for seasonal products such as charcoal and water hose and so forth, and they've converted to a mini clinic space. So as a result, the same care is produced more efficiently, and so this would be a supply curve with mini clinic, CVS. Same care now could be priced lower at say $70 because it has an improved technology for this particular care, of course, not for brain surgery, but for common cold. You didn't really need to see a doctor to give you a simple prescription or simple decongestion. So now imagine that you have a webcam mini clinic where you can go online and log in, and in a few minutes with the help of your webcam you can verify your identity and so forth, and you can actually talk to a nurse practitioner and they can actually either advise you or send your prescription to a nearby store, and as a result this technology of producing primary care in for cold care become even flatter. So this would be supplied with webcam MD, and you can see that in this case it could be actually priced $60 a visit. Now you have a cold issue and therefore your demand is what it is. This is your demand, but technological changes in how we deliver this product to you can impact the supply side, and therefore you and I will basically end up receiving more care at falling prices. And these are the type of technological changes that the medical care eventually has to experience in order to bring the cost structure down. So if we were to think of medical care industry as a whole and price of medical care, currently because of our cost and structure, we're a very high cost provider, therefore we have a very steep supply curve. The demand is what it is. With the insurance, of course, those who have coverage, the demand is price insensitive and therefore relatively steep demand curve. Now if we go through with the healthcare reform, the demand is going to increase. In the absence of any changes, the price will rise significantly. So therefore the only way we can deal with this situation is very rapidly improve significant innovations in the area of medical care production and delivery to meet the new demand, deliver more without pressure on prices. That's really the future of medical care has to look like if we are going to provide coverage to a larger number of citizens and so forth. So then the question is, how do we redesign and restructure the medical medical care sector in order to become more innovative and more creative and more efficient? And of course there are all sorts of web-based technologies, and Walmart is looking into this issue, at least for primary care, to see what they can do to bring this product to large masses at a significantly reduced prices. Okay, we are almost out of time. I'm going to pause one more time and hope that this discussion will help you one more time to see how to use so far the models that we've discussed to analyze implications, because in the exams you will get real life scenarios and you're asked to apply those tools and theories to unravel and explain to me what you see. In the remaining 5 minutes, let me give you an example. One exam question from the past was of FDA restructure. And the article essentially stated that the FDA is going to redesign its structure in such a way that in the past one group approved drugs and did follow-up. for safety and performance. Same group approved market introduction, released the product to the market, and they were in charge of also go back and follow up on its performance, safety, and so forth. FDA decided to break this into two groups. One group will approve, and the other group will follow up. Okay, group 2. And the question, the exam question was that what would this restructure of the FDA will do to public safety or public health? So the question reads that what will be the impact of FDA restructuring from one group to two on the market for public health? So read the question very carefully in the exam. Don't invent new ideas. So therefore, the product is public health because the exam question is asking you to look at it. So we have quantity of public health. This is price of public health. You and I and everybody else are in the market for public health, so the demand is there. The question is the supply side. FDA is not telling you and I to what to consume, but they're checking and making sure that the quality of the supply is acceptable and up to par. So currently FDA under one group, and the idea is that if it's one group, those who approve it are reluctant to criticize it and re-examine their decision. And so currently this is the supply structure with current FDA structure. As a result, this is the quantity of public health is produced at this price. If FDA's strategy to break up into two groups, so this group number 2 would be more vigilant to examine the decision of a group 1 in terms of performance of the drug. If they succeed and they scrutinize the drugs, production of public health will improve because better drugs will be in circulation. If that's the case, this re-engineering of FDA will flatten the supply or cost structure of public health. So this would be with new FDA structure. So as a result, we can produce more public health at lower prices. Now Crystal has raised her hand. Go ahead and ask your question. Crystal?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that to avoid negative externalities, that we
Okay.
impose taxes. That's correct, right? So because that would
Yes.
increase the price of production and lower quantity consumed,
That will raise the cost of
lower the
production,
cost.
not price of production, cost of production. There's a difference between cost versus price.
Okay,
Cost is what the suppliers or producers are dealing with. Price is what you see in the market.
okay,
Price has embedded in it the cost. So you may find somebody walks at the door and say, I just bought this pair of jeans, and you say, how much did it cost you? That's the wrong question to ask. Say, how much was the price?
okay.
The cost might have been $5. Produced in Bangladesh, you paid $25.
So in the market model, then when there is a negative externality, it's affecting the supplier then, not the consumer?
Well, when there is a negative externality, and to the degree that we could encourage and force the producer to absorb this social
Oh,
cost,
okay.
okay, the demand is there on the part of you and I. The supply represents, this supply represents marginal private cost. But I know that you're imposing negative costs on the rest of the population who are not even involved with the consumption. And let's say you're producing rubber shoes. Well, fine, those who buy rubber shoes love it, but those people who have to put up with the noxious smell of the chemicals in the vicinity and all the pollutions that you're causing globally as a result to produce, let's say, rubber shoes, the private consumers are not paying for that, and if that's the case, that's the price they pay, and that's how many to buy. But because these rubber shoes cause problems, and if we force the producers to absorb that, we have to throw in there the social marginal cost, or the total marginal cost, which is marginal private cost plus marginal social cost, will be different from just if you paid only for material and energy and so forth. And therefore, if that's the case, then price will rise and quantity consumed or purchased will fall, as consumers no longer, here was $15, now is $25. Some consumers drop out. Now, if we can go and tell a factory owner, say, look, you need to price these things 25, not 15, and give me the $10, essentially you've made them to absorb the social cost they're imposing. And the best way to do that is to impose a tax
Okay.
of $10 in order to achieve that.
Okay, so then the tax keeps them, it raises the cost of production, and then that in turns make people buy it less. Buy
Correct,
less
because
of it.
then the higher cost of production leads to higher prices, and higher prices reduces the demand.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, and that's what we want. That's why we impose tax on tobacco and alcohol.
Right.
And if you are accident prone, the insurance rates will go up because you are imposing danger to the other members of society, and that's one way for us to force you to pay for some of the damage or potential damage that you, or risk that you're introducing into this environment.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. I guess you have to turn your hand down. Okay, all right. We have Carrie, your question. Carrie?
No?
I hear you well, yes.
If we go back to the example that you were talking about with the impact on public health, and you were you put you changed the supply curve to reflect the increase in public health quantity.
Right.
I was thinking that the impact on price, though, would be, it looked like the price was going to go down, and I'm getting confused on that point.
Why are you confused? Because if FDA make sure somebody's microphone needs to be muted because I can hear myself back. If FDA restructure itself and therefore the quality of drugs in circulation are improved, then that impacts the public health because of better quality drugs in circulation, and therefore cost to the society, and therefore price will have to fall. Now, it doesn't mean that literally in the stores you pay less for drugs, or therefore, or because public health is not, for one thing, is something we buy and sell in stores or in the marketplace, but it is some product that is out there, and the citizens are in the market for it because government is protecting the environment and so forth. We pay taxes to make sure that the environment is kept clean and EPA standards are raised and so forth. So there is a product called public health, even though we don't buy and sell it as we buy and sell in the grocery store.
You
So-
identified exactly what my confusion was. I was making the incorrect association directly to the cost of drugs, and I thought, and that's
Right.
what was causing it.
Now-
Okay.
That's a very good question, because now what if I rephrase the question? I said that, all right, FDA restructures, what is the impact on the market for pharmaceutical? All right? So here, the quantity this time is drugs, and this would be price of drugs. There's a demand for drugs, and there's a supply of drugs. Now I'm a pharmaceutical. This time, same scenario, but it's different question. I'm a pharmaceutical. Before the FDA was so structured that one group approved of it, psychologically they were reluctant to do a follow-up and scrutinize it, so I could get away with it if the product didn't perform at the highest level. Now I hear the different vibes coming from FDA. They want to eliminate this psychological barrier, and therefore follow-up is in the hands of a different group. So what is the impact on me? Well, right now as it stands, this is the quantity and price. However, I'm faced with this tougher scrutiny of my drugs. My choice is to put in more upfront time and resource in research and development to make sure that the drug will fare well, because different sets of eyes are looking at it and collecting data. Given that, the cost to the drug companies will rise. And that, if that's the case, then supply curve shifts to the left, because they have to put in more time and resource to make sure the drug really is beyond any doubt going to perform well in the marketplace. If that's the case, drug companies end up releasing less drugs to the market, and what they do end up releasing will have to be priced higher because they have incurred additional cost, and therefore price has to be higher. So same scenario viewed from different perspective, will have different products identified and different line of reasoning and logic will have to be applied, because you end up in a different scenario in one case as opposed to the other, because I have defined two different products. In this case is drugs, and the previous case was public health. And you have to, when you answer exam questions, you have to be very careful not to invent things, read too much, stick with the question, read the question many times over. Make sure that you don't drift away into new ideas and new speculations and so forth and so on. That's one of the pitfalls that some of you will experience, and hopefully these sessions will avoid that. Any other questions before we say good night for the night? All right. I will save this recording. I apologize that the earlier portion didn't get saved, but the material is in the books, and I will post a link shortly after the session is over, and we will continue our conversations online. Thank you very much.